Well, welcome to the Patriot Feed. We got a great guest here. We got Dr. Dave Brat. I'm going to read a little bit of the intro, and then we're going to have Dr. Brat talk about all sorts of, enlighten us with all his experience. Dave was born in Detroit, Michigan, not Detroit, Texas.
Right.
He's got a bachelor's degree in business administration from Hope College, a master's of divinity and theological studies from Princeton Theological Seminary, got his PhD in economics from American University, taught economics and ethics for over 15 years at Randolph-Macon College, worked on Arthur Andersen in the World Bank in the private sector, was elected to Congress in 2014. Major historic upset over Majority Leader Eric Cantor. Served in the 7th District of U.S. Congress, been in various committees, and one that I think is really critical that I hope we can talk about somewhat is where you chaired a subcommittee on economic growth, tax, and capital access, was the dean of the Liberty University School of Business, and is now serving as the a senior vice president for business development, a national recognized voice on faith, economics, and conservative policy. Dave, it's great to have you here today. Tell us a little bit about your journey. We're going to since you're a tennis player too, I'm going to give you a lob and you talk.
No, that's good. Thanks for the intro. And, I'm at Liberty University. I love it. I was just on Jesse Kelly's show 20 minutes ago before I got here. And I was bragging on Liberty today. We recognized in the Hill, it's a journal up on the in the swamp. All of Congress gets delivered that. The Hill and Politico, and there's a third one. But Liberty is recognized the most conservative college in the country, training champions for Christ.
Nice.
And so I'll just throw that out there for starters. And then after that, I'm going to put on my my Dave Brat politician podcaster hat. And so all political views are my own and all that. But the first one, it doesn't matter. So yeah, I was born in Detroit, Michigan, grew up in Elma, Michigan, town of 10,000, in the middle of farm fields. Farmers were my babysitters. Great people. My dad was a doctor. He moved us to Minneapolis for high school because he was at the beginning end of the HMO strategy, which never worked. And then I went back to Michigan for college, had great business major, but the religion, their hope was solid in religion. I had good world religions prof, philosophy. The pastor was super good. And so then I went off to Arthur Andersen for a couple of years in business, but it wasn't me. And I knew kind of right away. So then I went to, the calling hit, and so I went to Princeton Seminary. I was going to be a professor of systematic theology. Wow. Yeah, my dad warped us at a young. We were reading, all the deep, dark stuff when we were like 12. So we had warped upbringing, Kierkegaard, Dostoevsky, and all this stuff. And so, and then at seminary, I came down to D.C. for a political semester at Wesley Seminary, right up by Embassy Road, Northwest, D.C. Northwest. And I worked in what was called the God Box with 30 denominations, Quakers and Episcopals and Jewish and Lutherans and whatever, every denomination you can imagine on policy. And most of them were liberals, right? And so no one knows what a liberal is anymore. So the liberals were not bad. Liberals liked, kids, and they didn't want war, and they cared about stuff. They don't understand economics or business at all. So
liberals have had quite the reformation, haven't they? They used to be good, then bad, then
there's
good.
There's none left. Now they're all Marxists, right? So now it's all the old liberals you could have a conversation and a good debate with are gone. Wow. And they've warped, but we can get into that later. But then, so I just got, that was my calling. One of the old guys there worked at USAID. No, it wasn't. It was the State Department. He was in whatever. And but a PhD economist at American University. He said, well, if you want to help these liberals, why don't you come learn some economics and do a PhD? So I went there for 5 years and did that, and then met my wife in D.C., and then we moved down to Randolph-Macon, taught economics for about 20 years, and then worked in Virginia Senate side for about 7 years, pro bono, just loved it, and had some crazy political stories there. We can get into that later if you want, but I was going to run for his seat, the senator I was helping, And the machine said, no, you can't do it. And I was like, what's this machine? It's that 2 years later, I ran for a lower spot, delegate, and they said, no, you can't run for this. And so I ran for it anyway, and they put a 24-year-old in over me and arranged it so there was no election. 4 people voted, and this is the Virginia machine, right? It's a disaster. And so I said, who's the head of this machine? And they said, well, this guy who's currently the head of Congress, and he's going to be the next speaker. And I said, well, I don't care who he is. I'm going to run against him. And so I ran against him with no money. And so that was a miracle, right? If you want empirical evidence of a miracle, that's about as close as you're going to
We don't have to go back to David and Goliath.
No,
we can do that.
This is the modern $5 million versus I had 180,000 versus 5 million and one. Wow. And so that was, and the next day was going to be the huge amnesty vote, nationwide amnesty for immigration. And so I was ahead of that curve a little bit. And I had some friends who helped me get ahead of the curve, so it's not all me. But there's all sorts of huge video productions of that event. The left just had a meltdown. the Republican establishment had a meltdown.
So they were planning on voting for the amnesty?
Oh, it was passed. It was going to pass the next day, and I won, and boom, folded. Gone. It folded. That next day. So anyone says a person can never have an impact on history, they're wrong.
Wow.
Yeah, you can have an impact that you may not have planned it, right? And then that turned into Trump came down to visit me not too far after that and was fast. He's like, what in the world is going on down here? And I said, well, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
But then the immigration thing took off and America First stuff took off. And so that's a brief intro.
Wow. That is so the Eric Cantor. So those of that, I mean, he was the Speaker of the House, and you talked about 5 million versus 180,000.
Yeah.
Campaigns are about money, aren't they?
Yeah.
Campaigns usually you have to have lots of money to get your word out, to get your name out.
Yeah.
And you won.
Yeah. Well, he made a crucial mistake. He did 5 million ads that weren't effective, and it made me look like a stick man with a dunce hat. And he called me a liberal professor, right? Because I was a liberal arts professor. And everybody that knew me knew I'm not a liberal professor. So I had a bunch of silver-haired ladies, beautiful Virginians. I walk up to the door. They go, Dave, you're not liberal, are you? Yeah. And I said, no, ma'am. I'm it's about as conservative as you're going to get. And I knew he was lying. So people read through it. But he gave me $5 million worth of name ID.
Wow.
So my daughter was young at the time. She was crying one day. She said, Dad, I'm so sorry. I've seen it. I said, Sophia, I shouldn't use names, but I said, sweetie, that's the best news I could ever had. My name
went out
is in lights, right?
Wow.
So he lost, and then John Boehner was the speaker at the time. He had to stay. So I went up to the swamp thinking all you old guys would be mad at me, and they weren't. I was treated pretty well. There were a couple. I ruined a bunch of business deals.
Okay.
But that was a good thing. So that was they weren't business deals. They were crony capitalism deals.
Wow. And so with that, so those things happen.
Yeah.
You actually, and then it changes the vote that they're planning on the very next day.
Oh yeah.
And so I guess this gives us lots of encouragement and instruction on don't count our chickens before they hatch.
Right. No, right. Never get cocky, and just keep the faith.
What's that thing that says pride cometh before something? I can't remember exactly what that is.
Never pride.
Yeah.
Never goes good.
And man, so he was running ads, attacking somebody who nobody even maybe knew.
No, absolutely no way.
Brought your name ID.
Oh, way up. Wow. Way up.
And then attacking on something that wasn't even close to being true.
No.
With the 15 or 20 year history of teaching.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about liberalism in economics.
Yeah.
I don't. When I look at economics as a finance guy, you think it's so black and white.
Yeah.
Pretty clear.
Yep.
Tell me about liberalism in the academic field of economics. Why is it so liberal?
Yeah, well, let's...
in a bad case.
Yeah, no.
Not a historically liberal.
Well, I'll just define terms, too, because there's classical liberalism, right? Like the founders, right? Madison and Adam Smith in economics had very similar logic, and they would be considered classical liberals. And the root word of liberal is liberty.
Yep.
Right? So this is the beginnings coming out of the Enlightenment and the Judeo-Christian religious tradition where everyone's made in the image of God. And if everyone's made in the image of God, then they're bestowed with certain dignity, and you can see how the rights language would, and they emerged in about the 12th century, only in the West.
Okay.
No one knows any of this stuff, right? Human rights language emerged only in Judeo-Christian countries in the West. And then we get it embedded in Madison, who wrote the Constitution. He went to Princeton Seminary, roughly speaking, where I went, right? Stuck around. He's the first graduate student in
Now, who's older
Hebrew.
between the two of you?
He's a bit. I knew his family also in Richmond.
Oh, wow.
They invited me to their family events and whatever because I went to Princeton Seminary, so they got a kick out of all that.
Wow.
And but if you stick around and you're first graduate student of Hebrew, the Hebrew worldview goes bad in like chapter 2, right? Genesis 2 is the fall. So if that's your worldview, and if you're designing a government, how would you do that? Well, you would separate human power every which way you can. And that's what he did, right? Vertically, you got federal, state, local, and then horizontally, you got executive, judicial, Congress. And so he separated power so that what's happening today could never happen. But now we'll get into that. And then economics is the same, right? So Madison wanted to protect minority rights factions, and Adam Smith wanted to prevent monopolies. So he wanted a bunch of small units competing against each other too, just like Madison. And so those are the initial liberal impulses. And then when it comes to rights language, the basic liberal contract that came out of John Locke, and then the theorists at our founding, whatever, there were rights, but they were called negative rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness only. No one has to give you those. God's given that, right? And so the job of government is to protect those. Today, if you go to the back of the United Nations report, the liberals, the modern liberals, they have just created rights out of thin air.
Wow.
And if you ask them, what's the philosophical justification, they'll go, I don't know. I don't even know what that is. They don't know what a philosophy, what a foundation, what's the theological. They don't know what God is. And I'm not joking. I mean, I'm not making light of them. I wish they did, right? I want good for them. But so there's been just this metamorphosis of liberalism, which, I mean, you can just grossly look at World War II and Roosevelt and that plan, and then Johnson and the war on poverty and that plan, just enhancing rights and privileges. But the trick to those rights is someone else is paying for it.
Yeah.
And they haven't agreed to that deal, right? And so and now it's on steroids, and we're paying for the rest of the world. Oh. And so it's interesting. It's interesting times. And then the left, right? It morphed into Marxist stuff, the liberals, and then even after Marxist stuff, it got even worse and went into deconstruction. People in philosophy, Derrida and Foucault and Rorty, and a analysis of language that's there are no foundations. It's all a power projection or a gender projection or a white European male projection or whatever. And then there's no foundations. So if you ask us, well, are there any human rights left? And they'll say yes, but they just undercut everything they believe in, right? So you can't make it up.
Yeah. So obviously your education, your theological upbringing, and your foundation took you into Congress. Other than most people that go into Congress, they kind of go in there because they want to feel important, or they're in politics because you obviously have a pretty well grounded. How did that help you in Congress? That lens that you see the world, that foundation.
Yeah. Well, it hurt me. If you have a traditional view of succeeding in politics, I won a couple terms and then taken out by the CIA. That's kind of a joke, but it's not. Yeah. People will find that out in the years to come, what happened there. But it helped me because from the beginning, I ran on the Virginia Republican creed, and I made promises to the people, my constituents. And adherence to the Constitution,
fiscal responsibility,
fiscal restraint, right? And so I put myself on paper. So it helped me tremendously because leadership wanted me to vote for their junk, and I said, "No, I'm on paper. I promised the people," and so they knew. And so it was good. I recommend that to all politicians because then it's not personal, right? It doesn't make it a party thing or what. I was like, no, on principle, I promised this, this, and this. I'm on paper. I signed my name to it, and that's it.
So that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, that's a great way. I think we live in a covenantal society theologically, and the covenant morphed into contract theory, right? And so that right, the government is basically a contract. God used to have a contract with the people. I will be your God, and you will be my people, and you listen to me. Yeah. And then the government is of the people. So, but the people are confused right now. DC is not in charge. You are. The people should be in charge, right? That's the contract theory in government.
Yeah. So do you have lots of you mentioned about the CIA, which I think we got to circle back to that. Man, I don't think we could just leave that
it's
one.
A doozy.
I tried to leave it, but it's like, ooh.
Yeah. Well, so the person that beat me was in the CIA. And since then, of course, with the explosion coming out of USAID and the intelligence reports that were made manifest, and who's paying for what, right? And we've been paying, right, the CIA's been paying for media back to Eisenhower. Wow. Eisenhower, for example, our CIA, along with MI6 in England, took out Mossadegh in Iran in '53. And he was democratically elected pro-Western, and was fine and dandy, except we didn't like the price of oil under him. So our geniuses in the CIA and MI6 overthrow him, and 20 years later, we get Ayatollah Khomeini as a trade-off, right, from a pro-Western guy, because we didn't like the price of oil. Well, it's their oil, right? And so, we're a world power. We can use a little coercion on these guys and say, look, we're providing free access to the sea lanes and travel and all this, so you guys ought to pitch in. And we can put a little, screws to them for a fair outcome. Yeah. But we've had 70 coups, right? No one knows any of this. We had a coup in 2014 in Ukraine. No one knows any of this, right? Gorbachev made a deal in 91, and he said, okay, the Soviet Union's falling apart, and they were had good relations. And under Bush, Baker III promised, we won't move an inch to the east. Well, we lied 16 times. We took over 16 countries. Ukraine's the last one. Wow. And it's a buffer, right? So our CIA has been creating havoc around the world. And now people have found out, right? The Kennedy assassination, it's not a conspiracy anymore, right? Most people know something's going on. Now, the Nixon stuff, Watergate, that was a setup job. The evidence has come out on that stuff. And this isn't like ideas have come out. Evidence, the receipts have come out on this. And so our CIA has been very corrupted. The FBI has been very corrupted. Russiagate with Trump, they all colluded together. And there's going to be a huge case, right? There's legal proceedings taking place right now on those matters, showing that the Steele dossier, which came out of the Hillary Clinton campaign, ended up being used by the CIA and the FBI and all of our intelligence agencies to take out Trump when he's president of the United States, right? So that's treason, right? And they got to prove it in a court, and so that's what's coming up. But most Americans don't know. They're very gullible. I came from the Midwest. We were so you call it Minnesota nice, right? They're very nice people, but there's shootings today in Minneapolis, for example, and they're going to have to get their head on straight. We live in a new, tougher world. Yeah.
I've known you for a long time, but I never knew the Minneapolis connection. I grew up in Bloomington, Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
So graduated from Bloomington Kennedy.
Yep. I love Minnesota. Nice people. Now they've lost their marbles.
They've totally lost their marbles.
Right.
I mean, and leadership is it's unbelievable, the difference of what happens.
Yeah, I know.
And now you're talking about D.C. and have you been up there recently since Trump has kind of cleaned up some stuff? Or
no, not. I'm going there next week.
Yeah, and I want to go up there too.
I know. I can't
because instead of walking over homeless dead people, it's nice and clean and safe. And
no, it should be. He's right. He's right. His dad said, if you see a dirty store window, don't go in there.
Yeah,
because the rest of the store is going to be dirty, right?
Wow.
And so he's a clean freak.
Yeah. So after Congress, so obviously you got lots of experience and lots of some pretty crazy stories.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah,
you hear
yeah.
these things, lots of times people would always say, "Oh, these are conspiracies. Oh,
Yeah.
these are this.
No,
It's
no,
just
no,
some theory."
right, right.
Now the receipts are there.
Yeah.
And people are actually seeing the truth.
Right.
And how the government and how individuals have been so gullible and they've used that.
Right.
So now after that, you transition and come to, I guess,
Right.
transition in a good way. You come
Yeah.
to Liberty University.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Dean of the School of Business and
Yep.
Government.
Yep.
How was that transition?
Yeah, well, and before I go on to that, we could just fast forward to the lack of liberalism coming out of conservatism now,
Yeah.
right? So we have monopolies, right? The magnificent seven firms. Seven firms own 40% of the S&P 500,
Yeah.
right? So these are all monopolies. Republicans seem fine with it. Leadership is perfectly fine with it because they're writing checks. But this is very scary with AI and generative AI and what that can do. And putting that in monopoly hands is just stunning as a country, right? And then the argument is, well, we got to do this to beat China. And at the same time, we're giving all of our chips and AI and tech to China.
Yeah.
Still, up to this day, when we're switching, right? We used to be Atlanticist, right? And the USAID people, they're all Atlanticists. Whenever you hear that word, that's roughly correlated with the CIA.
Okay.
And they just cannot get their heads out of the Russia Cold War mindset. Now it's Russia. We need a rapprochement with them, which means they're not going to be our best pal. But we want a two-front opposing China, right? Russia on the north and us in the Pacific. So we should clearly be focusing all of our energy on China right now, but we can't. Right, because of all these ongoing Ukraine and all this, and UK and France want to go in and fight a war against Russia, and Iran, Israel. We'll see. People want regime change. Our warmongers want us to go do regime change there for another 30 years, right? And everybody in DC is getting paid off, and our boys are dying. 1.5 million dead and injured in Ukraine, and 1 million dead in Russia. Never factored into any economic analysis or anything, right? So that's just to finish the story. And I'm not partisan, right? I'm not one of these red Republican flag wavers that say everything Republicans have done. They voted for the $7 trillion budgets, the $2 trillion budget deficits, the border stuff. The vast majority of the Republican conference that I sat in was fine and dandy with the massive, because they're getting paid by big business, wants cheap labor.
And so you mentioned early on how the machine was trying to keep you away, maybe because the machine understood that you were a critical thinker, that you had a great liberal arts education, that you could
and I was
through.
independent. I didn't kiss the ring to come up through the system.
Yeah.
They have that system where that should never happen.
Yeah.
Right, where you take on the guy who's going to be speaker and you win. That never happened. That's never happened, right? And so now with like Trump out of nowhere and wins the presidency. So now it's a new day, and a lot of people are getting. But before that, right, the system, and to get even more cynical, a lot of this is constructed by what's called the uniparty. They make deals. The parties make deals within themselves. You get rid of my rabble rouser, I'll get rid of your rabble rouser. We'll help you take these folks out. And then we'll make joint budgets together. That's why you're getting the $7 trillion budgets and that are Biden budgets from Republicans.
Yeah. Wow.
So people think, and so the billionaire class has us squawking like chickens at each other, and people think that there's a fight going on, and the reality is the big money is going undetected.
Wow. So what's the hope? What do we do?
Well, the hope, I heard a stat the other day in London who's having terrible social strife, just crazy cultural blow-ups. But the young men over there, the stat was something like 12% were going to the Church of England or the church or whatever. Now it's 40% a year or two later. That's a major shift in culture. And so that's the only thing I see that saves the day here, right? The Judeo-Christian West, that tradition. The Christian church has become pacified and weak throughout the country. You saw during COVID, everyone just kind of, obeyed, kneel and obey. and
forget to trust that God is in control. And God controls our lives.
Or
and health.
ask, right? Or ask God, what should we be doing? There's not even a national conversation. And in the war with Israel and all this kind of stuff, that's controversial. Where's God in that mix? The Ukraine, Putin's religious, we should be broaching this on every issue of the day, and we're not. And so it's up to the young people, right? These young podcasters sitting over here. They need to do what they're doing, spread the message, find leaders who are spouting stuff that sounds good for their generation, who's getting totally ripped off. Yeah. Right? Medicare, Social Security are both bankrupt in about 7 to 10 years, and then they got $60 trillion in debt in 10 years, according to CBO, Congressional Budget Office. Wow, $60 trillion in debt.
So we're going from 35 to 60 that quick.
Yeah, wow. We're at 37 or 8 now, and then $2 trillion a year for 10 years is 20. Wow. So 37 and 20 is 57, and throw in a war that is going to happen.
And as you mentioned earlier, the Uniparty. So thanks, Republicans.
Oh no, they're going along with the whole shooting match. They're not stopping anything.
Yeah, which is
right. And so we had to get back to the basics. Harvard's motto in 1640 was truth, right? Truth for Christ and church. No. At Harvard. And it was the same at every major elite university. Wow. For 200 years. Wow. Right? All the prime universities were trained clergy. All the presidents were Christian. All the boards were Christian. And that set up massive economic growth, massive enhancement of human freedoms and liberties, getting rid of slavery. This is a great country. So I'm not poo-pooing the country. I'm poo-pooing the leadership, like the CCP in China, who is crushing their people. And the American people are still very good people. They got hopes in them. They got religion in them. And it's not religion, it's God, right? And so that God's never done. And so we'll see. Yeah. We'll see. He's yelling, but we're not listening.
Yeah. And so the verse of my people are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and ask.
I hope so. I hope so. Right.
So you came here then to Liberty University in 2019. So hopefully we can take the segue from what you mentioned about the young people. Yeah. How can we educate our young people at Liberty University better so when they come out, they're, maybe economically better, maybe they're, what can we do to improve?
No, well, Liberty stands out, like I said earlier. I mean, we're number one in the country, but top one conservative, our motto is training champions for Christ. And so, my job as the dean of the business school and I started the CEO Summit, is to tell the students, every student I meet, I ask them what their major is and what their passion is and whatever, and I tell them, that's all great, now minor in big data. Yeah. Right? Yeah. If you want to get a job, it doesn't matter what you're doing, right? If you're in a church, who did I meet? Someone going into sales. It's all lists. It's all data, right? Yeah. Everything's data right
Politics.
now. AI, politics is all lists. And so they kind of get it. The young generation gets that. And then you got to find the big firms and relationships to hire the students. And so all that's in the works. But it's just staying at the first principles. The country right now, as opposed to Liberty, there are no, like Brown University has no curriculum whatsoever. The students just get to take any courses they want, right? And then at the leftist schools, the courses they choose are all leftist ideology stuff, for real. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up, right? You can go look at the syllabi. And they couldn't stand in an argument for 5 minutes. And if people want to get serious about ideas, you go read Alan Bloom, The Closing of the American Mind, from about the 80s. Just a brilliant Chicago philosopher. And then there's a more recent guy, R.R. Reno, R-E-N-O. He was the editor of First Things, a highbrow theology journal, but he wrote a book recently called Return of the Strong Gods. And his argument is we've been weak and liberal in the weak sense of the term, and the left has gotten rid of our loves and our strongest desires, right? The left has obliterated our love of God and God in the institutions, obliterated the family, and obliterated the church. So all of our loves and the objects that we're trying to have been destroyed publicly, right? And so he's saying there's a return of the strong gods, and they can either be good or evil. right? You can have your Mother Teresa variety or your Hitler, Return of the Strong Gods. And so he's saying, like the stat I read about the young men, it's coming back, and we better make sure the strong God is God Almighty and not some substitute, right? But it's he'll tell you after World War II what went wrong in academia, what went wrong with the left, the attack on all of our foundations and the loves and Bloom does the same thing, but it's a longer, harder read.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with I've read a lot of the Thomas Sowell.
Yeah, he's great. Great.
I got a stat today this morning, because I watched a podcast where the guy was saying, 50% of marriages end in divorce.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to Thomas Sowell saying, well, that stat is kind of skewed. And so I called our local, we had 884 of marriage license last year.
Yeah.
225 divorces.
Yep.
And so that stat of 50%,
Yeah.
I think, Thomas Sowell was saying, think about it critically. Is that really everybody ends in divorce?
Right.
Or was it just how many were married that year
Right.
versus how many had divorced that were married for years up until
very
that
good.
time?
Very good. No, that's great. I know.
And so thinking about those things as, and listening to him as an economist, I'm thinking like he's actually looking at facts and dissecting and not just taking, some talking point.
Yeah. Well, and with that, I mean, if people out there listening, when I say there's been an attack on our institutions, right, on the country, on the government, on the church, on the family, that I hope is patently obvious to everybody. So then you got to ask yourself, how did that happen? And a lot of people will say, well, it's just incompetence or naivete. And they're going to find out the answer is worse, right? It's been planned strategically. As we learn about COVID and we learn about these things, that we're learning some nasty. Go read Robert Kennedy's book, right? This thick, The Real Fauci. At the end, he documents the trial runs on, hey, what if a COVID type emerged socially? How would you take control of the press? What would you say to keep the press down? How would you arrange this? This was way before COVID, right?
Wow.
They had trial runs, and he's documented all of it. And so the American people, I think, are ready for that now, right? We've always kept it. But when I was going back to Eisenhower, it wasn't only the CIA's bad, but USAID controlled and paid for all of the mainstream media.
Wow.
ABC News, CBS, NBC, they still do. So when you see them saying the same thing across every news media every day, well, how do you think that is? Yeah. And so like the stat you just gave jogged my memory. Do a little critical thinking, and when Russia has this many troops and Ukraine has this many, who's going to win the war?
Yeah.
And the press a few years ago was saying, Ukraine's won. And anybody with a brain in their head said, this is not going to go good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Kennedy's The Rise and Fall of Great Powers. If you have this many armies and you have this, you're being lied to, right?
Yeah.
So now the Ukraine is lost, 2 million dead and injured, right? And we did that. The United States of America allowed that war.
Yeah.
And it's our weapon systems, our satellites, our intelligence made that happen.
Yeah.
And the American people did not want that. So if you at home didn't want that to happen, who overrode you? Yeah. And that's just one example, but that's what you got to start thinking. Yeah. Right? Somebody overrode the will of the American people in a republic.
So with that thinking and with your experience at Liberty, what kind of things do you think the school can do to bring in some of those centers or some of those
that's what we're
items?
doing, right? I mean, it's just the church is getting, its legs back, and, Liberty's been strong the whole way along, but the more public speakers you bring in, the more academic excellence you bring in, the more national leaders you bring in, and they bring in a lot. And so that the students listen, and the students, I think, are pretty savvy these days. I mean, they're following social media and stuff more than I do. So I think they know what's going on in the world. And so
you mentioned about a couple centers, like the Freedom Center. What else could we do? What other kind of centers do you think we could add?
That's my job. I'm going around the world looking for donors to help support, centers for national security, centers for free markets, center for constitutional rights, et cetera. and centers to other centers too to help the rest of the world, right? Like the church should do.
Okay.
And so I run a big Africa program. We kind of have a mini Africa center to help Africa develop business relationships with CEOs in the U.S. to help them grow.
Huh.
And so we're doing a lot already, but we just need to do more. And we're a baby university. We're only 50 years old.
Yeah.
And so we're going to mature and do all of it.
Yeah. Well, which is nice to see. And you're right. The convocation is just a couple times a week.
Yeah.
We need more of that.
Yeah.
We need that.
Yeah.
in
No, they're
classes
amazing.
and-
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And I know the students sure do miss you from being in the School of Business.
Yeah. No, I
mean,
love
they
that.
appreciated your
Yeah.
banter with them
Yeah,
and
yeah.
seeing
No, I
your
love that.
smiling
Right,
face
right.
and talking and
Yep.
energetic.
Yep.
Now you talked about the AI and all these races
Yeah.
and stuff. Do we have enough power? What are we going to do for power when we have to?
It's a disaster. The left, if people want to go, there's a great article. It'll be evergreen, right? But it's in Zero Hedge, and it's the Europeans moving from the Keynesian economics, right, which is all government run, from a green, which has failed. So they're all broke. They're all growing at 0%, right? Germany, UK, France, whatever, Italy. They're all growing at nothing because they made all the wrong decisions, the wrong choice of economy, the green stuff. So now they're pivoting from Keynesian green demand-driven stimulus to defense-driven
Okay.
government spending stimulus,
Yeah.
which again it won't result in productivity. And so Trump is doing the exact opposite. He's moving toward all supply side.
Okay.
Right? He's bringing in $2 trillion investment from U.S. investors, $8 trillion from the rest of the world into the U.S. When you add capital in the hands of the American worker, productivity goes up and your wages go up. Right? And so it's just dumbfounding, right, to see the logic. And I posted that stuff because I was trying to give the U.S. a warning. We got to get off that. We're going to end up just like Europe with low anemic growth.
Lots of windmills.
Yeah, right. Lots of windmills. And so people, go read that. Where did you want me to aim that thing? The question you
Where
said.
you're going great.
No, well, that was that.
We talked about AI and the need for power.
Right, and power, right?
Yeah.
And so the green stuff, we have major power generation problems in all the main states. California is having rolling blackouts. Texas has threatened rolling blackouts. They're that close to the grid being able to fulfill because we went to all this green stuff.
Yeah.
And solar and all this, which all sounds neat, except if the sun's not shining, you don't have power. And guess what? Prime energy and air conditioning people get home at work at 5 and 6, 7, 8, and then the sun ain't shining. And these are trivial, but I'm on the war room with Bannon. We got Dave Walsh. If people want to track a serious conversation on energy, it's a disaster. So Trump's going full bore, full spectrum energy dominance of nuke, electric, coal, clean coal, everything right now. And it's huge. That's a 0.5 point to 1 point in GDP growth right there.
Wow.
If we get that right. And then the AI power production, we got to watch this stuff. This stuff, before they go crazy on this, if you listen to the geniuses, right, if that thing learns to think and can code itself and gets looped, right, there's all sorts of evidence already that the machines have threatened their bosses to kill them. And there's other stories already. Yeah. And we're not even at stage whatever, right? Yeah. And so the power thing, the Congress, just the common sense would be, and you can detect the power from orbit, right? There's only going to be a few of these in the world. So we'll have like 5 of them here. But you pull the plug on them. Yeah. We need to learn how to pull the plug is more important than even the generating the power, because I don't want these things getting out of control. Okay. Right? AI, it can be a tool, but there's new studies out of MIT last week that only 5% of firms in the U.S. have implemented AI in their business. 5%. It's at 95% not. Wow. Right?
Just wait till we get to 20.
Yeah. I know. And I don't know if we're going to get there. They hyped it. And some of the founders of the OpenAI a couple weeks ago said, yeah, there might be little glitches coming up. It's not going to be this explosive thing that we were told. I don't think. There was a lot of marketing to get government funding, I think. Okay. And so it's going to be a little less than that. There's articles out today in Zero Hedge again, which is excellent on that. There's estimates for how big it's going to be. But that is the challenge of our age, is managing that and managing the monopolies who just a month ago, I mean, you're in politics, so you're following these stories, but the House dropped some language in the budget, which is law, that the states would have no power to regulate AI and the big tech firms.
No.
And the base, the Republican base, which is now awake, and that's not the old school, the boring ones, but the new bases went nuts and said no. And so they pulled it back, and we said no. But the leadership is always doing these kind of things for the big money.
Yeah. Wow. And protecting the monopoly. So with that, you talked about, so we also have all these trillions that are coming into America.
Yeah, but that's going to take years. So I'm not trying to be, I'm not
and
cheerleading.
So with that, people can plan ahead, just like you would with education.
Right.
What about the workforce to meet all this capital?
No, that's the great question. I should have paid more attention to that. That when you mentioned Liberty University or universities, it's, as a country, it's a total failure. Right, so in Chicago, the literacy rate, reading, right, for poor third graders in Chicago in the third grade, the literacy rate's 12%.
Wow.
So 88% illiterate. In the big cities, it's a total tragedy, right? So everything we're talking about goes to the super rich, right? The people that own stock, the top 10% in the country own 90% of the stock in bonds and pensions. Right, so all those AI advances, all the Magnificent Seven, it all goes only to the rich. And so we've left the working class behind. Trump is trying to change that. He's trying to put capital, bring jobs back. That's the tariff piece, right? We're putting tariffs on the rest of the world because we have huge trade imbalances, trade deficits with everybody. And the rich 20 countries have 200 to 300% higher tariff and non-tariff barriers on us than we have on them.
Okay.
So once people know this, the American people, then they go, what? How did you politicians let this happen? No. And everyone's scratching their head, and Trump looks like a genius because he's just got the innate business mind. And so he's making their tough moves.
So with some of the tariffs now in the free markets, which obviously was the platform of your campaign back in 2014, and free markets still apply today.
Yeah.
I think you probably say that it's better for us to buy bananas from some country that grows it rather than us making them ourselves.
Yeah.
So how are the tariffs going to actually work?
Yeah. Well, so you got to put it in context. The rest of the world, from an equity point, has been taxing all of our stuff 200 to 3% higher than us.
Okay.
So there are no free markets.
Okay.
And then all the firms are monopolies. So there's no free markets. And then China's stealing all of our stuff. So there's no free markets. And then my libertarian free market guys, I ask them, hey guys, and I'm friends with all of them. I said, do you think it's possible to do free trade with a totalitarian communist surveillance state that doesn't use prices? Prices are what make free markets free markets. The price, using price systems, right? That's the genius of the system, is the price signals reveal tons of information. Yeah. Boom. China doesn't use them. And they say, yes, it is. And I'm like, no, then the conversation's over. I'm sorry, right? Then you're intellectually, this is not going to be an honest debate. There's no way you can have free trade regime with a totalitarian communist regime. Now, you can still have trade, and you can take advantages of comparative advantage and specialization, like you just said, and we want to do that. But when the other guy is running your ships off the ocean, shooting water cannons at them this week in the Philippines, our ships are in there helping. And we've never done that to another country.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. We're not angels. I gave the CIA story. But we're providing free passage on the oceans for everybody for trade.
Wow.
So we're paying that bill. No one else is helping us.
Wow.
So that's the tariff piece is going to help pay that and defray that cost to everyone else who's been free riding on us. And Trump said, nope, 10% minimum, you're paying a fee. Yeah. You want into this game that we're footing the bill for, you're going to pay a fee.
So it's getting back to more of an actual free market.
Yeah, and a fair. No, that's the irony. It's going to end up with more free trade.
Yeah.
Not less.
Yeah, and getting there looks kind of ugly.
Yeah, it'll look sloppy.
To somebody that says, "Oh, we just like free trade," but you didn't understand the context of where it came.
Right.
So you're talking about the ships and everything. Now, our shipbuilding in the United States, we're probably pretty woefully behind, aren't we?
Yeah. No, we're way behind, right? And China is building a huge blue water navy.
Wow.
And then they're staking out, right? They got the, what's the islands right there in the South China Sea? I'm going to mispronounce it, but China has marked off these 7 or 9 dashes. And they say, basically, we own the entire waterway surrounding China. Well, there's other countries there, right? There's Japan's there, the Philippines there. There's other, that's Spratly Islands. Okay. They built roughly the equivalent of U.S. aircraft carriers to get to your thing there on all the islands.
Wow.
So in addition to having more ships than we have now and newer stuff, they're not trained. They haven't fought wars. So I don't think their military has got near our capabilities. But as I was arguing before, they have a ton of weapon systems and 1.4 billion people, and they don't care about those lives, so they're just right. And so that the ships is a serious issue. We're way behind, but while we're doing $7 trillion budgets, we can't afford them.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to cut back on the junk and get strategic, and then you got to position these forces off into the Pacific, into Asia, not toward the Atlantic. Wow. All of our military is aimed in the wrong direction. Wow. And that's why we don't have the right ships and forces to go east to China.
Yeah, my dad fought in World War II, and he was in the Philippines in the Army Air Corps. And so you're talking about in the Pacific Fleet, and we're kind of woefully behind then.
Way behind.
Because of capitalism, because of free markets, because of innovative thought.
Yep.
That's what brought America from the 20th up to the first like that.
First, right.
But now you're talking about us being strapped by all this debt, strapped by paying kids that can't think, or government that's kind of working against itself.
Yep.
A lot of headwinds, don't we?
No, we have. I hate to be so pessimistic, but that's where we are. It's not over, but we're losing ground. China, to be fair, also is fading. No communist regime has ever succeeded long run.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to get cocky, but they got a lot of problems, right? They have ghost cities. They got a demographic. They're supposed to go from 1.4 billion people to 800 million.
Oh, wow.
That's by about 2050, 2060.
Wow.
That's a massive problem they have. They got as much debt, if not more debt, than we have.
Wow.
They got a resource allocation problem because they don't use markets. They've got what? They've got a youth riot problem right now. They have an unemployment problem.
Wow.
And so their system, they can fake it until it breaks. Yeah. And once it breaks, it breaks. It's not like our system where we've got recovery systems because we use markets. If theirs breaks, that means they've been faking it for so long that they've got nothing left. Wow. They got no juice. And so, as evidence of this, the Belt and Road project has faded drastically. And their priorities look like it's shifted toward defense, and they're becoming more self-sufficient because they know what's coming. Yeah. And then the question is Taiwan, right? Where do we go with that?
Yeah. Man, we've got lots of things.
Yeah.
Good thing we do have the Bible that can guide us. Any biblical principle on economics or freedom that you want to share with our listeners?
Well, we're made free by God. And I mean, it's just my favorite verse. I shared with faculty at some meeting a couple of weeks ago, but I love John 1. In the beginning was the Word. And I don't think Christians are spending enough time in the book getting educated on church history and theology, because it's not just like you put your finger down and there's some answer, right? You mature in the faith. And now the irony is we have the Bible on our phone, and access to the Word of God into depth, but there's not thinking going on,
Yeah.
right? We should have systematic theology. That's what I wanted to go into. There's no systematic theology anymore.
Wow.
Right? I mean, systematic means where does economics fit into the structures of a democratic republic, and how are we structuring things in a way that is Christian?
No.
And we set it up that way at the beginning, but ask yourself, how many theorists have mentioned that? Hey, I want to set up our institutions following basic Christian thought in that worldview, based on human nature being not good, to put it charitably, right? And people need to think bigger that way, right? We need to get educated, and it's not simple, right? Even your view of eschatology in the end times can have a major impact on real world applications today.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and that's you mentioned about Liberty University and chaining champions for Christ.
Yeah.
And Dr. Falwell, it's so nice to see that mission still there.
Yeah. No, it's real.
Whether
It's
you're
real.
studying psychology or business or
Right.
economics,
Yep.
that you're not just working for your boss. You're actually accountable for your actions.
And they are. The students, I go in the gym every day. They're reading the Bible. They're doing the stuff in the morning. They're all getting ready for the day. It's stunning.
I hurt my back and doing something, and so I had a kid that was there, and he said, "Oh, can I pray for you?"
Yeah.
And it was like,
Wow.
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 I mean, it's a young black athlete kid.
Yep.
That's like you
Yep.
kind
I
of
know.
the stereotype that you wouldn't have there. So
Yeah. No, it's stunning. The students, there's not a more ethical, honest, Christian, loving. I was dean. I never heard a racist or sexist comment or anti-Semitic comment
yeah.
in the 4 years I was dean.
Yeah.
Not one.
Yeah.
And I'm not lying. I didn't hear one.
Yeah.
That's a remarkable.
Yeah.
That's a remarkable stat.
Yeah. And now, anything you would like us in closing? I know we appreciate your time. And man, this has been a great conversation. And we could go on for hours and days.
Well, the politics, I said I'm not, we haven't gotten too much into politics, but there's just one thing I say on the politics. And if you're not sharing the best thinkers and the best podcasts and the best newspapers with thousands of people, you're failing as a patriot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right now, it's not enough to just get mad and yell at your computer, right? And have a few buddies where you all, I'm mad, I'm upset. Lists are the key, and we have to win elections. And everybody says, what's the secret to success? There's no secret to it. Your list has to be bigger than their list. That's the vote.
Yeah.
If your vote is not bigger than their vote, we lose, and you're going to lose the country.
Yeah.
And so every Christian, you have a responsibility in this civic thing God's given us to develop lists and get savvy. And if you don't like it, make your kids do it or cut off the car from them, right?
Yeah.
You young people listen to this.
Yeah.
They don't like it back there,
Yeah.
right? If they won't do it and help you with the new, social media stuff and all that, you ought to send the best people who I do the War Room show. I don't think there's a more educated person than Bannon on the geopolitics. Yeah. So if that's your thing, share that platform. It's on Rumble, it's on RAV. Share that thing with everybody you know. Yeah. If you like economics and soul, share those writings and links with everybody. Everybody. I'm not saying send it to 5 people. If you've noticed, go to a Republican club committee. There's like 70 people.
Yeah.
How in the world are you going to win an election when 70 people show up to Republican meetings?
70 old people that can
and
get
they're
around
older,
it.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So we need these young guys.
Yeah.
So threaten them, take away the will, take away their car keys. I'm kind of joking, but
there's
get 'em
trade-offs. Those are
working.
your economics.
Get
those
'em
are
working.
incentives.
Yeah, those are
there's
incentivized.
disincentives and
Right.
incentives.
And the young people will finally actually enjoy doing it.
Absolutely.
It's a win-win. We're not saying this just to eat your spinach.
And the nice thing is too, they're growing. They're growing, and they're
getting
growing
there.
to when they're coming to listen to someone that has had so much experience as you have, and able to still share that with them.
No, it's great.
So they can get better, and so they can improve our country. Because eventually you're going to be old, and we're not going to have
you
you
young
anymore.
people, don't do all this trendy junk, right? Pay attention to the fundamental. Pick what are the 10 most important issues to you as a person and your generation. What are the 10 most important issues? Rank them. Yeah. And then pay attention to those 10.
Yeah.
Don't go off on the stupid whatever, hype of the day.
Yeah.
Everyone's wasting their time on getting hyped up on this stupid stuff.
Isn't that a political saying that says, keep your eye on the main chance and don't stop to kick every barking dog?
Yeah. Yes. Just keep the main thing the main thing.
Yeah. Well, we very much
No, it's
thank
great
you.
being here. It's great.
And, we're just so thankful for you to be here. We hope our listeners of Faith Economics in America, love for our country that are shared by you and inspire these people. And thank you all for being here tonight, and we'll figure out how they can close.
Yep. So, and you got and the folks listening to this podcast, share this podcast with everybody you know, right? Help these young guys generate every church. You got a church list with emails and phone numbers. Bug everybody.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to be bugged, tell them they're missing it. Say Brat says, get going.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job, you guys. Very good.